Welcome back to the Dream Big Summit, creating a better life for yourself and the planet. And I'm talking with Simone, who came from a glitzy advertising world, who was head of the magazine for fashion, for Glitz Fashion, and had 15 employees, lived in New York, had the life, and millions thrown at his feet. Suddenly come to realize that he didn't know what his core was, what his soul was. So if you've missed that conversation and didn't listen to that yet, please go back and watch the first part. It is full with ideas, descriptions, honest self-revelation of his own beingness, his journey, but then also techniques, and also going down into nutrition of what you can do to create a better life for yourself. And then also a mantra that he has, being of service to others, improving the lives of others. That is really, I feel it rings from his cells. I'm so happy to have you back, Sa. Your credentials are long, your amazing background, and the world that you're in now is phenomenal. So you are now a teacher, a coach, or a meditation guide in the realms, and you are being invited by like United Nations and museums of modern art, and fill in the blanks. What was it? American Express Platinum memberships, and teaching, the glitz world. And yeah, here you are. Tell us about when you went from the glitzy world into the ashram and had 30 days of silence.
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
I did. Thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity to share. I think those 30 days, a lot of the stuff that I had been.
That is now in the Himalayas. You're in what does it look like? You're sitting in a hut, or where are you?
So I'm in a monastery in Nepal. This is in Kathmandu Valley. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is a huge commitment that I had made to be at that space. First of all, after the first week I was there, I had believed my thoughts so much that I had believed that my whole family had died. I was for sure, every single person in my family had died. I had no way out. I was there. I was alone. And mind you, you're in silence. So people are going around and they're writing notes and they're passing a piece of note that says, hey, I love you. You're okay. Everything's going to be okay. And you can't even hug or have any physical contact with anybody because you're in silence. You're taking monastic vows for that month. So there's no human connection. You can't even connect eyes, You're passing notes around with things. So I actually did something that I don't share with a lot of people. I'll share with you in your audience. I actually paid a monk $10 to let me use the phone because I had gone the neurotic thought pattern had become so psychotic that I was like, my family died and I'm still here. What the fuck? What's the point? So I called them. My mom's like, no, everything's fine. Everything's great, actually. And at that point, throughout that period, my sister actually decided on a leap of faith to leave her entire life and head to India. Which she says that was the moment that she saw me after I came back from India the first time. I had gotten off the cab. I was about to go up to her Soho apartment. And it was at that moment that she saw me coming off the cab that she noticed that something had completely shifted.
Yeah.
It was at that very moment that she was like, okay, I want to know what the fuck you got. I want some of that. And that's when she decided later that year when I went to Nepal to do this course, to do this training, that she actually decided to come to go to India. And that's what my mom told me on the phone. But anyways, the whole thing about the 30 days in silence, you really get to face your suffering. You really get to understand how much suffering we've been living in and how much we've been conditioned to think of ourselves and others in such a negative way. And we've allowed those hypnotic thought patterns to be with the first week. I was like, why is everyone crying so much? Why is everyone having such a hard time with silence? And then, honey,
you found out.
Yeah. I found out really clearly that I had been living under a fucking illusion of a rock, that I didn't have any suffering, that I didn't realize that it was, to give you an idea, there was one incident that happened when I was about maybe 8 or 10 years old, that I was in a playground and my dad I was in the playground with this other kid. This kid pushed me off the swing. I fall off the swing. The swing hits the back of my head,
Ouch.
and I'm crying. My dad comes into the playground area. He doesn't address me at all.
Mm.
He takes care of the other kids. And then, okay, that goes on. Life goes on, right? 20 years pass. That's when I realized that simple exchange, that my father didn't take care of me at that very moment that I felt like I needed to be taken care of. I needed to be cared for, or even have that physical touch in the back of my head. Are you okay? None of that happened. It was what created such a distance between me and my dad for the rest of my life, for this past part of my life, right? And then the relationship that my grandmother had with my mom, how that created my relationship with women and with love and with myself, and growing up with oppression, and how much every time I try to express myself sexually and gotta know how much every single one of those times, and I could tell you every single one of them clearly, because that's what happens when you meditate. You go deep into that, to excavate. So the things bubble up. And then we need the support. We need the Sangha. We need to have the people around us reflect back to us that our worst deeds do not define who we are.
Yeah.
That how we've been conditioned to think about the world and ourselves isn't the reality of who we are. That we are much deeper. There's so much more to us. And then the teachings of the Buddha really showed me that there was a way to really get to know our inherent qualities that have been talked about in the yogic scriptures, in the Buddhist scriptures for thousands of years. And throughout that silence, I was able to have the distance to see, oh my God, this pile of shit right here, I've been living through it. So I've been wearing these glasses so this pile of shit had actually become the way I had seen the world. The vision that I had of the world was so conditioned by these obstacles that I had lived through. So every time I gave it awareness and I was able to see through and understand what that was, it started to dissipate. It started to fall away. And I've gotten closer and closer contact with my inherent qualities, which were blissful, non-conceptual, and totally luminous. And I started to understand what those big words are, what it is to be blissful, what it is to be non-conceptual, what it is to be totally luminous. What the fuck does these big words even mean? Excuse my language, but I didn't have a concept of it. I couldn't fathom what they were. So through that process of sitting quietly, I understood that the mind, we've been pulled away. We've been distracted by all these sense gratifications, by all this conditioning, by all this trauma, and we hadn't been able to observe our inherent qualities that lie just dormant within us, waiting to arise. I didn't have the potential because I've been so gravitating of all these labels that I've attached around myself. So the labels fall away, and then it went to the traumas. And when I faced the traumas really deeply, there's some of them that I still get a glimpse of it here and there. But I can tell you that I go through days, sometimes weeks, without having guilt and shame as part of my main vocabulary. That I go through days, and sometimes you will notice, because, you know, there's part of the brain that's linear, but the reality is that nothing about us is linear, right? And when you release a guilty contract that you have, a guilty agreement that you have, a shameful, a fearful agreement that you have of a trauma that's seeped into the perception that you have of the world, there is a potential that to live a life free of suffering. And when I speak about the linear perception, the non-linear and non-conceptual, right? It has to do with the idea that you might actually free yourself from that old agreement of fear and guilt and shame. And you might not even know if it was last year, the last time you thought about this, or that was overarching, or if it was just yesterday. Right. But it doesn't, excuse my language, but it doesn't fucking matter. All that matters is that you're learning to let go. You're learning to come in closer contact with these inherent qualities that, as you said, these, as some people, the vocabulary is of soul qualities, right? Fundamental qualities of our soul are blissful, non-conceptual, and totally luminous.
Mm.
And I don't even know what was it that you asked at first, or what the 30 days was, right? But these are some of the things that really came up for me.
Okay, so let me ask you then a concrete thing, or just repeat some. So here you are in silence. You see things bubble up: the traumas, the identification, the fear of loss of identification, the fear of loss of beloveds, the bondings, everything that defines our humanness falls
Oof.
away, or we're afraid of losing it. But then ever more, I mean, and so you describe it as like something bubbles up, but you are looking at it. So I think that is the technique, right? The very moment you give space between yourself and the trauma and observe it rather than be sitting inside of it
Yeah.
is part of the therapy, if I understand you right.
Completely. And a huge part of it goes back to what we talked about in the first part too, is the neurolinguistic aspect of using parts vocabulary to say, a part of me has experienced trauma, a part of me is guilty, a part of me is shameful. That witness perspective is what we're trying to exercise every day.
Yes.
So bearing witness to the shit, I'm sorry about all the curses just coming out of me right now. I hope we can censor it.
No, we can't, but I'll hold you to that reminder of
Okay.
speech and deed and all that.
Yes. It's getting me excited to talk about this. But the reality of that I've realized through this process is to have the awareness, to have the witness perspective, and then if you the next thing you want to do is talk about is to use the parts vocabulary, to not let the whole of yourself say, I feel guilty, I feel shameful, I feel depressed. Is to say, a part of me feels. And that alone, research shows that you're building new neural pathways, that you're able to become more biologically resilient.
Yes.
So in the face of fear and all these old contracts of shame, you're able to then have resilience and come back to that equanimous state.
Beautiful. So in the languaging itself, you create a new identity and become this other self that is no longer associated with the trauma, but is capable of looking at it, and you're opening space for that inherent, and I love how you say that, the inherent qualities of soul. I mean, I know it's a Buddhist term, but
vocabulary, yes.
Vocabulary, but it's like the inherent qualities of soul start shining through. So walk us through. So you looked at these things, they started dissolving, and then what came up? Then what evolved in you?
So some of the very first deep meditative states that I reached was to start to see all the things bubble up. And then I had this, it felt like a physical space. And then at the very moment, I started to feel this overwhelmingly blissful sensation. And this overwhelming sensation of not attached to these concepts. An overwhelming sensation of the luminosity part of just being able to be unaffected by this and taking every waking second as a potential for enlightenment. And that was one of the most liberating things I did.
So you come to the ground of your beingness. You come to the ground of who you are and touch in with that, connect to the source.
And also, but doing a lot of work with trauma victims, some people they can't close their eyes, and that's okay. We honor that, right? Research shows that 7 out of 10 Americans have experienced enough trauma that they can access compassion from a physiological level, and therefore they're not going to feel comfortable closing their eyes. That's okay. And perhaps the meditation of closing eyes and going in isn't about that. The only thing we need to do, the most important thing we need to do, this is also the Buddhist training that I'm speaking here, contemplative psychotherapy, is to sharpen the mind, right? Have an object of focus. Because every time you're able to connect to the breath with a non-judgmental approach, return to the breath over and over again, you start to subconsciously, the old agreements are falling away. The mental knots, they're untangling. So when they come up again, you're not going to have the same reaction to them. You're going to be able to respond to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So tell me more about the breath and the physiology of it and how it affects the brain.
Okay, beautiful. This is something I love to talk about.
Oh, really? Oh, good. I picked the right question. Cool.
So we know that and this is why meditation is such a huge thing, and why I've been able to work in some of these big corporate environments, is because meditation changes the infrastructure of the brain. And what it does is actually changes the brain. In some research, Sarah Lazar, a neuroscientist from Harvard, says that it changes in 5 main areas. 4 of these areas associated with compassion, emotional regulation, cognitive abilities, learning, and essentially making us emotionally intelligent.
Just by breath.
By focusing, breath awareness meditation. Simply returning to the breath over and over again. So having an object of focus, right?
Okay.
So meditation is a skill. And when we train long enough in the skill, we become great at it. And the greatness of it is just to be able to sustain awareness of the breath over and over again. And this practice in the Buddhist tradition is called shamatha. So simple awareness of breath. And you've lived in the Himalayas. This is
I love that. Yes, I love.
Yeah.
But so basically, what you're saying is by training any kind of focus, but we can take the simple amount. We can take breath as our honing signal, and returning to that, observing it, simply just saying, "Okay, I'm thinking. No, here's my breath.
Exactly.
Here are my thoughts, emotions.
Exactly.
So here's my breath."
Exactly. By simply returning to the object of focus, non-judgmentally, effortless, over and over again, you can then start to change the brain in these, change these 5 main areas of the brain. And these 4 brain that are associated with the qualities that we want to have more of in our lives: compassion, empathy, cognitive abilities. These areas actually increased in size. And the part of the brain that's associated with emotional regulation and stress in general actually decreased in size. And they looked at the same physiological analysis of Albert Einstein's brain. When his brain, University of South Florida had the opportunity to look at his brain. And they also noticed that he had a larger prefrontal cortex and a smaller amygdala, showing that he had some kind of meditative approach to his life. Perhaps it was the when he could tune in. But the most important thing is just to find the object of focus that works for you. I always coach the breath, but some people like to have a sound or a mantra. Different traditions offer different object of focus, but to have a meditation that you feel comfortable with returning to the object of focus effortlessly, non-judgmentally, over and over again. And at some point, you're going to dip into these abyss of bliss, of compassion, of tranquility. And then this is when the magic starts to happen. These mental knots start to unravel. And it's not that you need to do the work of opening up and looking at the trauma and walking yourself through all that stuff and being there with all this. You can do that work too.
It comes by itself.
It comes by itself. It's just the thing is happening right over here, and it unravels, and next thing you know, you're like, wow, I haven't had that thought, or I haven't felt this way in so long. And you notice this seems to that we're building the resilience through the meditation. And why do we use the breath? Because the breath's a physical sensation. Because
and it's there.
It's always there, always flowing, contracting and expanding. And that's a huge part of our dualistic approach to life, right?
So tell me, do you slow the breath down? We normally breathe, 16 times a minute? You recommend doing?
Yes, exactly. So medical research shows that the average person breathes about 16 to 20 times per minute, creating incoherence between the brain and the heart. And the variable of the heart isn't something that is like that. It should be actually something that is variable, really ecstatic.
Like have strong electromagnetic fields.
Exactly. Strong strokes. And when we actually slow the breath down to 5 breaths per minute, we're creating coherence between the brain and the heart. And therefore, we're toning the vagus nerve. We're toning the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is within the parasympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system, is the largest nerve bundle in the human body, connecting the microbiome of the gut to the core of the brain, is also connected to oxytocin networks in the brain. Biological proof that we are compassionate beings. Which
Naturally.
is so fascinating, you know.
I love that, because we always wonder, I mean, humans, are they just like absolutely nuts and ferocious, or what are we? Exactly. So tell me, so what does science say? We're naturally compassionate beings based on the fact that we have a vagus nerve? No, based on?
It's some of that research comes from the vagus nerve, because the vagus nerve gets activated when we experience suffering and inspiration. And the
both.
Exactly. And the response to that is a compassion, is the cuddle neurochemical, oxytocin. So it's the love feel where you feel the feels.
So if the vagus nerve gets stimulated through suffering, you just said, how does it respond with suffering, towards suffering?
It responds with compassion. If you have a strong vagal tone, this is what proves that human beings are biologically compassionate. You see, because we're experiencing suffering or inspiration, and the response that we have is through the neurochemical oxytocin.
It's the same response.
It's the same response.
So
however,
how do I create a strong vagus tone?
Exactly. That's the key. It's through deep belly breaths.
Okay.
It's why we look at the medical research of slowing down the breath and taking deep belly breath. It's one of the main powerful ways to strengthen the vagus nerve. Also, strong vagal tone comes from having a healthy gut, which is the fundamental part we talked about in the first episode.
Yeah.
Having that as a huge part. And meditation, exercise, service
creates a strong vega tone. So how do they measure that? Or how do you measure a vega tone? What do you call it? Vagus tone? The vagus nerve?
The vagus nerve. It's the strength that the nerve bundle has. They measure to the level of inflammation that you have in the body.
Okay.
High level of inflammation means low vagal tone. Low level of inflammation means high vagal tone. And they've shown that the people who have the strong vagal that we talked about in this episode, they have this X factor about them. Like you walk into a room, you turn heads, not because you're tall and you're beautiful, not only because of that, but because you have this X factor that having a strong vagal tone attributes to. And it goes back to the conditioning, right? In a very simple lay terms, it's like people care about people who take care of themselves, right? It's a very basic understanding of reality. And people care about people who take care of themselves. In a way, you can take one further step and just say, if you have low inflammation, I am gravitating towards you because you're not inflamed, you're not sick, so I'm attracted to you.
I'm safe because you're not going to jump on me. Yeah.
Exactly. And then you look at the research about the vagus nerve and then it all sort of matches up. I mean, obviously, I'm not a scientist. I'm a full-time meditator, but I spend a lot of time reading the medical research, reading the neuroscientific research to be able to create these theories that make sense to me. Yeah. And when they make sense to me, that means it makes sense to more people.
Yeah. So actually, I find that fascinating because, normally we think of school of life teaches us through pain and suffering. If we do the wrong things, through pleasure and happiness. If we do the right things, it's sort of like hot, cold, right? So by going voluntarily and becoming or inviting the vessel of consciousness into our body by calming down, we really make a step up in evolution and become that compassionate being, but only if we take that time. Otherwise, we still have to learn through suffering and pain responses. But when we step back, we create the opening to let the bubbling bliss guide us, and then the universe can start talking to us more. Tell me about how miracles start coming into how your thoughts shape reality once you've purified your traumas, or at least given yourself space to be that blissful being daily. How does manifesting and miraculous living come into being from your perspective?
Doing these practices leads you to being. And the being is pure potentiality, right? Is blissful, is abundant, is forgiving, is compassionate, is completely, utterly creative. So it's at that very moment that you start to do these practices daily that then you can actually, as you said, create the space for pure potentiality, for openness, of newness, of miracles to take shape. And it's also a huge practice is to take yourself. It's to take the vocabulary very seriously. Yes. So a practice that I have with my clients is to write down write down the things that you want to do. Like, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? And we work with 3 months or 6 months, right? Or it's actually 4 months or 6 months. And that's a very important timeline of But this only works if you've done the fundamental changes of taking personal responsibility for your life. If you've started to meditate, you've started to breathe properly, you've started to exercise, you've started to change the group of friends, you're hanging out with people who boost the happy hormones, who are supporting and reflecting back to you that you have the potential.
Yes.
And then you can actually go and read the personal affirmation and start to rewrite that story. The research into epigenetics shows that people, we're living out, we are our genealogy is based on 5 generations of trauma. So how do we have the space to actually create a life of miracles if we don't clean up the stuff, you know?
Yeah. So taking care, cleaning, observing, and using awareness as a brush, as a wash, as a sponge, and then the breath as a calming like beacon to allow the core to come alive. And then you take goal setting. You do goal setting with people, or you
setting goals. And this could be daily goals. And then from the daily goals, it could be weekly goals or monthly goals. But then here's the secret sauce.
Okay.
It's to have your aim, your master aim, right? What is it that you want within this year? I want to make $3,000 a week. I want to go to Bali. I want to do this. I want to do that, whatever it is. Write down in simple terms what it is that you want and repeat that in the morning. Repeat that in the night.
Yes.
Conviction.
Yes.
With conviction.
And how do you create the conviction? How do you create that sense?
Worthiness. Start with, I am worthy of making X, Y, and Z. I am worthy of traveling to Bali. I am worthy of meeting the love of my life. I am worthy of healing. I am worthy of forgiving. I'm worthy of love. I'm worthy of being loved. I'm worthy of shining. You can use these vocabularies. You can use very strict vocabulary, which it could be, I am worthy of making X, Y, and Z. I'm worthy of having this amount of clients. I'm worthy of, working from that vocabulary, because His Holiness the Dalai Lama, main thing he said about the West is we suffer from self-loathing.
Yes.
So much. And you look at self-loathing, what is it? Self-hatred. Self-hatred leads to what? Lack of worthiness.
Yeah.
So if we start with the vocabulary, it's been cooked into us to thousands of years out here in the West. And we worked with the word that our ego self, that part of ourself, the shadow self, was going to be like, oh my God, no, I'm so afraid of that. It's going to start to play out all the cards on you. You bring that work, you write down those affirmations. And then you start with that. You have the gratitude practice, and then you affirm. And then you meditate, then you breathe, then you run, then you eat clean, then you have the correct association, then you exercise compassion for all beings everywhere. And you want to see miracles happen in your life right away. 2 things you can do.
Okay.
I
love you.
Offer. I love you. Is gift something to everybody that comes in contact with you. And it doesn't need to be a physical thing. It doesn't need to be like, oh, here's a pen. It could be a silent blessing. It could just simply be, may you be happy. May you be free of suffering. You don't need to say it. You could just think
Feel
about
it.
Yeah. Right here. The mind's eye, intention, speech, and action. And at some point, you just start to see how things start to change.
Oh, I love that. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful nugget right here at the end of our conversation. I love it. Wow. I just, you emanate it. And when I see you, I see a monk, I see a yogi, I see like this being that is entrenched in that understanding, teaching us, coming here, reincarnating into the West, and coming through all your own human challenges to say, I've been there, I've done it, I've come through it, and I'm alive. And you create miracles. You just come in and say, of course it's going to happen. Duh, I'm going to pursue it. Duh, it happens,
It's been through your support and through, I remember very clearly that one phone call, several times we've kept in touch when I was excavating deeper and deeper, more and more of this trauma was coming up. And I remember you being there for me and support, community, find the people who support you.
Yes.
Surround yourself with people who reflect back to you of your inherent qualities that you have. And people who don't bring out the magic in you, cut them out for a little bit at least, you know?
Yeah. No, seriously. I think we all really need to look at first taking care of, dive deep, become who you are, and then take another look at, do you have people around yourself who speak with sarcasm, with humor, as they say? It's, oh, I didn't mean it. I just was joking. It's like, I am very hard on my anybody I come in contact with. classroom, seminars, I say, what? That really hurt. Did you just say that? And they're like, no, I was just kidding. Sorry. I said, really? But I don't think my subconscious can hear jokes. It's like our subconscious, our innocent being is just wide open. And listen, I'm going to do a little spiel on say what you mean what you say. Is when you have to constantly say to the universe, no, I didn't mean it. Well, geez, how many times do you want to say that to the universe? Say what you mean what you say, and cut the rest out. And take out other people and make them aware. I don't want to hear people not say what they mean. I want people to hear. I want to listen with wide-eyed open, and listen to them and let them in, and not put up little walls and say, oh, they're going to say every minute something else. No, I want to be open and say yes to what they have to say. And those friends I keep.
Exactly. And that's why I keep you.
That's why I keep you. I love you.
I love you
so
much. Thank you deeply for having me on your show. And it's an honor. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And if people want to get in touch with you, obviously, I will have a little page here for you that you can share information about. So to pursue you at your Simone.com. It's saadsimone.com. But we will have all that here on the page just below on a button and above for your free giveaway. And then we will adore you again and again and again through replays. And I hope everybody passes this conversation on to all their friends. Please share this information to all your friends that you can, and help the world become a better place, and dare to dream. If Glitz Sa came from the glitzy New York world to the ashram and came back to be a consciousness teacher, we all can make a big shift in our life whenever we want to. Over to you.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. You are worthy of the effort. Remember that. You're worth the effort to do whatever you want. And have people around you who reflect back to you that you have that potential too. Cool. And come on, do the work, right?
Do the work.
Meditation, the little breathing, get to it. And we're going to have links for that. But, the discipline, it's the repetition of simplicity that leads to insight.
Yes, the repetition of simplicity that leads to insight. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you, my love.
Bye.